In the world of medicine, where every decision can change lives, your peace of mind is crucial. This is where Pattern steps in. Imagine insurance made simple, fast, and personalized, just for you. With Pattern, you're not just getting disability and life insurance, you're insuring your future and protecting your greatest asset, your income. In the past 10 years, Pattern has transformed the way over 20,000 doctors secure their financial well-being. Discover the simplicity of securing your future at patternlife.com or click the link in the description. Find out what is negotiable and what isn't negotiable in your contract from someone who's been in physician recruitment for a large hospital system for 10 years and doesn't work for them anymore and can now spill the tea. Hey, this is Brad Block, host of The Physician's Guide to Doctoring. This is a personal and professional development podcast for physicians where we have experts on the show that try to teach us everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. Welcome back to the podcast. We have a super cool episode today because we're going to go behind the scenes of physician recruitment and find out some things that we usually aren't privy to. We have Kristi Olsen, who graduated from Oregon Health and Science University and earned her master's degree in hospital administration. Upon graduation, she was hired by Providence Health. For those who haven't heard of it, it's the third largest hospital system in the country with over 50 hospitals, and they're recruiting 1,400 physicians and advanced practice providers annually. So she was initially hired as a physician recruiter and eventually worked her way up to executive director of recruitment and outreach for their physician recruitment organization. So she was really in the weeds with recruiting physicians. She saw a lot of inefficiencies in that system, and so that led her to help found Beginly Health, where she's currently the chief strategy officer. So Kristi, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So yes, behind the scenes, I was so glad when you said that you can share information from all your experience recruiting physicians with this huge health system. Like, we don't often have access to someone who can give us like what we can really ask for. So before we get to that stuff, let's just talk about the different types of recruiters that are out there, because you are an in-house recruiter, but then there are some smaller health systems that utilize headhunters. We should know going in that these are two completely different recruiters with two different agendas. So let's talk about them.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It's important to know who you're talking to because you can leverage recruiters differently depending on sort of who they're employed by or kind of what their end goal is. But to your point, there's this in-house model. Large health systems employ in-house recruiters, teams of them if they're big enough, and they really work intimately with the medical directors, can be your advocate. You know, you can ask a recruiter questions about salary or sign-on bonuses, and they can be a really strong sort of intermediary / advocate for you in front of a medical director. They know a lot more about the culture of the practice. Their paycheck comes from the same place, so their motivations are typically a little bit different. And that's where I spent the majority of my career. Our team also did do some support of non-Providence entities, actually. And so we got to sort of be an agency-esque recruiter for some other health systems. So what that looks like, it's a contract with a system, a large system sometimes to augment their current workforce, or a small private practice who just needs some help finding somebody. So, you know, this is when a group can't typically afford to have a big, robust in-house team. So they go leverage these agency recruiters. Those are the recruiters that just sort of understand that they're motivated differently. They're typically paid a commission upon placement of a physician. They likely aren't going to be able to negotiate on your behalf or influence much on the other side with the health system. So they're basically in existence to find a physician, to put them in a role, and then, or to put them in front of a recruiter or an HR person in-house and then be on their way. Again, motivations are different. Paychecks do not come from the same place. Paychecks are very different, likely. An in-house recruiter is a salaried employee, sort of like more of an HR function. These folks are more sales-oriented, I would say.
If you have an in-house recruiter,
yeah,
right, there are like a finite number of spots they need to fill.
Yeah.
But if they're not matching people well with the positions, then those spots are going to be empty again, and they're going to have to find more people. So if they're not doing a good job, they're going to be making more work for themselves. And if they're doing a good job in filling the spots and the people are staying, that reflects well on them, and they're probably going to be promoted and, you know, get additional raises and responsibilities, and they can work their way up the ranks. So they have a motivation to find a good fit. Whereas a headhunter, you know, if they fill a spot, they get a commission. right? If it doesn't work out for that person, it doesn't reflect, it might reflect poorly on them, but like that person might go back to them and be like, listen, this wasn't a good fit. What else do you have for me? And that's an opportunity for another commission. Now, I'm not saying that people are doing that, but I'm saying like there's different motivation here. That does motivation. It drives us.
Yeah.
It changes our behavior, whether we will it or not.
100%. And I think the other thing, at least speaking from my personal experience, I became working for Providence. I loved the organization. I was indebted to, the people I was working with, and I wanted to find the physicians that were going to work in the community that I lived in, right? So it's a little bit different. It's like this physician could be caring for me or my family. It feels a little bit different. Whereas an agency recruiter is living anywhere and placing docs anywhere. It's, so it's just the emotional ties, I think, are a little bit different. And then there's also locums recruiters. So I think that's a third bucket of people who are reaching out to you all that are also under an immense amount of pressure. There's only so many of you, and there's all different kinds of recruiters interested in talking to you, which may be why you feel the inundation or the inboxes are full of things you're not really very interested in. Because at the end of the day, in-house, agency, or locums, the pressure is high. Obviously, there's this shortage, and it's a stressful gig for people. And so you're doing whatever you can. You're reaching out to whoever you can. That's kind of just the nature of the job right now.
So for the in-house recruiter, I was surprised to learn when we spoke before the show of how much influence they can really have, because I would think it's like the department head or, someone within that, a physician within that department who's really has the say with regards to the contract. What's really happening?
Yeah.
At least your experience with this hospital system.
I will tell you, if you are working with an in-house recruiter, just use them. They can be a buffer to go ask questions on your behalf so that you're not the one asking the tough question in an interview, but they can also negotiate schedules or, hey, I have a spouse who needs to come. Can we try to open a position? So there's lots of things that an in-house recruiter can do for you that an agency recruiter would never think to do. And to your point, negotiating, we had some negotiating power. I wouldn't say everybody does, but there are boundaries within any of that, right? Of course, you can only go up to X for a sign-on bonus, but recruiters can often get in the mix on that stuff, and they can push their medical directors to extend things that they wouldn't have otherwise to get you hired. So just always use that in-house recruiter to your benefit.
Because the recruiter might say something like, listen, this is the 6th candidate we've interviewed. We've been looking
100%.
for someone to fill this position for a very long time. You gotta bend a little on some of these issues. Yeah.
I would spend a lot of time with our leadership saying the trends are changing. $20,000 signing bonus isn't going to cut it anymore. And so just like mapping against what's happening in the industry and advocating for, salary increases or sign-on bonus or loan repayment. There was a long time where the loan repayment thing was only happening in rural markets because you just did what you had to do. And I'll tell you, loan repayment strategies it doesn't matter if you're in urban markets, you're seeing them here now in order to remain competitive. And so, but that's the recruiter giving feedback to people who can make those decisions. So that's what a solid in-house team can do for an organization.
Got it. Any other ways that you think that we might be able to leverage recruiters that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, but like I said, just don't be afraid to be candid with a recruiter. If you're anxious about potentially asking the wrong question of a medical director, ask the recruiter first. Or, hey, I'm really curious about, is that an appropriate question? Because you said this before, recruiters are motivated to hire the right people into jobs. They're also motivated to fill their jobs. And so if there's a way to help paint you in a better light to their teams, they're going to do it. So ask them the questions first.
They want to fill the position because it looks good for them. They want you to be happy and stay because that reflects well on them. So there's kind of like a parallel motivation there.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about what we should be asking for, because it's a mindset shift. You're coming out of residency. It was hard to get into college. It was hard to get into med school. It was hard to get into residency. It was hard to get into fellowship.
Yeah.
But now, because it was so hard each time, there's so few candidates that went through all of that. Now we're the prize, right? Like the only time we're not is if you're like looking for a program director or a chairperson position, right? Because you might have to move all around the country for that. for your first job out of residency, there are a lot of options. You are the prize. We're often afraid to ask. So what should we be asking for? Like, let's start with some of the big stuff that you see that you're like, oh, they need to know this.
So to me, it's funny because I experienced this at Providence because I worked really closely with our residents when I was there, doing presentations about how to prepare yourself for interviews. And now at McGinley, same thing. We're, having residents come through and beta test our product. And over, we just hear, I'm anxious to ask about salary, because often you're not going to see that in job postings, which is kind of ridiculous. I'm anxious to talk about salary because I'm going to paint myself in the light that I only care about money. Or, I'd really prefer to work 4 days a week. I'm anxious to ask that because then I'm going to come across as lazy or whatever it may be. And the reality is, ask all the questions, because to your point, you are the prize. It's no longer, even new grad physicians, I would say, felt even more anxious about those questions. Gone are the days where employers get to be super picky about who they want to hire. That's just the truth. Put it all out there. Make sure it's not just the basics too about salary. It's also what happens. Let's just say you sign your first contract and they guarantee you a salary for 3 years. What happens after that? How many people in that group are actually achieving that threshold and, earning enough work RVUs to achieve a threshold, or are they all taking salary cuts after this guarantee? Is this a really productivity-driven clinic, or is this more of people just want to kind of exist and do the bare minimum type of thing? So ask more questions about comp. Just compare them with other offers. Get more than one, just so you know. But the comp is more than a base salary. Compensation structures are super nuanced. And I think people get in that trap where they just sort of go after the biggest salary in a general location they're interested in, and they forget.
Yeah, and then you might have to work your tail off in order to make that salary, as opposed to going for, a slightly lower salary. We don't have to work nearly as hard.
Or are you going to be capped, right? You could be a really production motivated person and be capped and then not be able to achieve that income that, if you're willing to see 30, 35 patients a day, make sure that you're not going to be capped. Everyone has a different structure. What'd you say?
I said no cap. I think I just used that wrong.
No, I think it's good. Ask those questions. Always ask about the culture of the practice. I think it's fair to, I think it's interesting to ask the tenure in the group. Why are they recruiting? Are they backfilling somebody? Why'd they leave?
Could you ever ask to be put in touch with people that have recently left? Because that's something that I did with my group that I'm with currently. Interestingly, one of them eventually came back. So the two people that I spoke to, really their circumstances were not similar to mine. And so the reasons they left were something that would never happen to me. And then ended up in a career. But is that something reasonable to ask for? Or is that a little rude?
I think it's a reasonable thing to try to find out. I don't know that you're going to be able to get that from a recruiter or a hiring manager, but to try to seek out why people have left, I think it's not a bad idea via a network of some sort. But I think there's other ways of getting to that, or just ask directly and see what you can get from the leader you're interviewing with. Their answer may tell you an awful lot, like, oh, they couldn't hack it.
Yeah, after they delivered a baby and they wanted to take care of their kid, we didn't have any good maternity options.
We talked about this a little bit too, that one of our advisors to the product had said, this idea of vacation both, how early do you have to ask? How far in advance do I have to submit for vacation? Because I don't think people think to ask that, but boy, what if they said 9 months ahead or a year ahead? That'd be really unfortunate.
When I was a resident, we had to pick our vacation schedules a year in advance. And so I always ended up going on vacation by myself because there was no way to coordinate it among your friends that far in advance. That was actually later on, just in case Jesse and Amjad are listening, we did go on surf vacations together. But still, yes, that's right. For me, I'm a partner in my practice. We all manage our own schedules.
Yep.
If I forget to take off next week because of my, pre-K graduation, I can be apologize to all my patients, but we've got to cancel the morning because I got to go.
Right.
Whereas, you might not have that flexibility. Leading a medical practice is challenging. There can be reimbursement changes, referral slowdowns, staff turnover, or drama. There are obstacles in the way of achieving your goals, or maybe it feels like you've hit a plateau. Who can you turn to for help with the business of managing a medical practice? The Physician Growth Accelerator, a private practice partner that helps you uncover and overcome constraints in your practice. They will check your business vitals, identify the root cause of what's restricting your growth, prescribe what to do about it, and help you achieve it, just like we do with our patients. Imagine your practice, where stress is reduced, profits increase in both patients and staff, and you are happier. They've been making that vision a reality for over a decade. Isn't it time your practice thrived? Discover how at physiciangrowthaccelerator.com.
And then also just sort of the culture of taking vacation, I think is interesting to think about too. Like how many people, you may have this competitive PTO, allotment, but does anybody use it? That says a lot too. And that
hustling.
Everybody has their own motivations, I think, for what they want in a practice. And it could look different coming out of residency than it looks 5 years later. And that's okay. So just sort of do that self-assessment of like, what's important to me besides just salary? Like, what are the components that will be important to me today? And ask those questions. Because this is more than just what are you going to be doing clinically? You can get that, pretty quickly. Ask those questions too. But then, what is there a work-life balance culture in this clinic? What does that look like? And how are people supporting that? I think these big organizations are really working hard to make statements and support work-life balance. What does that actually?
Yeah. Are they just paying it lip service, or are they practicing what they're preaching? So, we talked about salary. I just want to talk about it a little more before we've really beaten it to death. How much have you seen it swing? When you're talking about either base salary or productivity, like when you're asking about salary flexibility, have you seen it swing like 10%, 50%? Like how much can it, if you're really, say, it's a position you're desperately trying to fill versus a position you might have an easier time filling?
This is such a lame answer, but it depends. But I will say, I know. But here, let's give a little more color to that. So within our organization, it was pretty well defined. Also didn't, I think most physicians also recognize that advocating for a higher salary, especially as a resident or somebody new to a market where you're making more than the rest of the physicians in the group, probably doesn't feel great either. So there's salaries and compensation models were fairly well defined where I came from.
So you're saying no flexibility there?
No, maybe is a little bit harsh, but minimal on the salary side.
Got it.
But the flex can come in other places. So sign-on bonuses, anything that's sort of a one-time feels a little bit easier to negotiate. Loan repayment, that's the kind of stuff where maybe you're negotiating stipends if you're finishing your last year of fellowship or residency. You sign early, stipends. Those are
when
the
you say
kinds
stipend,
of things.
I didn't have anything. I'm not familiar with that. You're saying like you're getting paid now, even though you haven't started work yet?
Yeah, welcome to the
pay off some
new
credit
age
card
of being
debt or something.
software. I know. Like you could have signed a contract 18 months ahead of your start and negotiated getting paid a monthly stipend to make sure that you're going to show up. That's a new
right, because you got to pay that back if you don't show up.
Correct. Putting a little bit more of a hook in.
Yep.
That's a new strategy, newish. Again, back to this like rural urban thing. That was a rural strategy that you're now seeing deployed in some urban markets too. So, ask for these things. Do you offer this? Ask for a higher sign-on bonus. Hey, especially if you're entertaining multiple offers and the other one is bringing forward something more competitive, you can show it. Like that's super helpful. Proof is in the pudding, I guess. And then I think it's also really interesting to think about the different organizations have different rules around this. Like Providence was big. It was pretty cookie cutter. But if you went down the street and you were interviewing at a private group, they would probably be able to flex a little bit more because it's not, they need to be more competitive, but also recognize that some of these private groups can't afford to guarantee salary for a really long time. Like that's just not feasible.
But what you should be asking is long-term. Is there a possibility for partnership? What would partnership look like? Listen, I'm serious about this. I want to be here in the long term.
Yep.
If I am done, if I do jump through whatever hoops you want me to, at what point is there some degree of partnership? I would push everyone to ask those questions
100%.
Because I had, there's so many stories of people being like this carrot that they can never quite grasp. And they're not like a real partner because, I founded this place. And so it's just going to be, you can get 5%. So having those conversations early would be something that I would push for in the vein of like, listen, I don't want to take over this place, but like I'm committed to being in this place long term. I want to make this my home, my practice. I want some ownership of it. And so,
and that's that's the difference,
piece.
right? I mean, again, I said this before, but everybody has their own set of motivations or interests that they're looking for in a practice. And so the only way you're going to find out is by asking those questions. And those private groups and that partnership track is beautiful, right? Like that's never something a large healthcare org is going to be able to offer you. If that's motivating to you, absolutely. Maybe ask what the average, especially in private groups, is kind of dumbfounded meeting with some of the local private groups around me. And them telling me what the average physician earnings are annually is just like blowing the in-house, like the large health system employed models out of the water. And I'm like, if people knew about you, that would be really compelling. So how are people finding out this stuff, which is, I guess the
segue into Beginly Health. We'll be talking about that soon. Yes.
Anyway, but that's the point is like everybody has a different thing that they're offering. Big health systems are safe, guarantees longer, bigger sign-on bonuses. And then like that long-term thing sort of, I think, fizzles out a little bit. So whatever it is that is motivating or necessary for you, you should ask those questions.
So speaking of those things, so some of the things that came to mind for me that might matter to someone is like restrictive covenant. Can I negotiate my restrictive covenant? Is that something that's negotiable?
Yeah. I mean, especially now.
I mean, I've heard that that's going to evaporate, that it was an overreach by the FTC, but
it might be an overreach, but I will tell you that the trends are showing that those are going away. They're hard to uphold. That being said, don't just willy-nilly sign and hope that it will never come back to bite you.
No, negotiate it. Yes.
Negotiate it. And like, even if you do leave and you get out of a contract, you're still going to probably spend a decent amount of money on legal fees to get yourself there.
You still got to fight it. So save you and the health system money by just negotiating it down early. And then intellectual property. Intellectual property, is that something that you ever see?
Yep, absolutely. I have seen that go a couple of ways. I think if you come into an organization with something that you've been working on, absolutely negotiate it ahead of time. I think sometimes if you start a thing after you've been employed, that might be a little bit different. But even still, like just if it's something that you've ever thought might be an issue for you, negotiate it out of a contract.
And is there anything that we can do to make ourselves, now we've already said that we are the prize and we're sought after, but there might be times where, right, we want to negotiate for a bunch of stuff. So we want to make ourselves as an appealing candidate as possible.
Yeah.
So how do we paint ourselves as being someone that the recruiter's going to go, oh man, you guys really need to have this person in your department. And then you should definitely, give them everything they want.
I think aside from just the classic, like great training and that kind of thing, the more that you can articulate your ties to a particular area, the more you'll stand out. If somebody was, interviewing for a position with us and they've heard really cool things about Portland, Oregon, but never been here, you can do better. Maybe your family, whatever. Just tell a story about why it's the place you want to be.
You plan on putting down roots, right?
100%.
For that same reason as before, you're looking for permanence. You're looking to fill a position that you never have to fill again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Retention is it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing to organizations, obviously, because recruitment is expensive, shortage, etc. Like hiring people who actually want to stay will go a long way. Do your research too. I mean, look up the organization, find a few key things from their website, talk about those. I mean, make it authentic.
This is why I love you guys. This is why I'm coming to you and staying.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that's the kind of stuff that will put you at least ahead of people who have like training and experiences.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a leg up if you're currently practicing. You just will, especially if you're currently practicing and can bring some panel with you. That's going to go a long way. But I don't think that happens all that often anymore.
Because of restrictive covenants.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't.
It's so bad. Yeah, I've really seen those things bite some people bad, and it's sad. But yeah, just paint the picture of you really loving what the organization stands for and really wanting to stay in that place. And you'll be like putty in their hands.
All right. Is there anything to avoid? Is there anything that's going to make you a candidate that they're going to be like, you know what? You might have better luck across the street.
Like, I know somebody else who's interviewing. I'll give you their card. Yeah, I mean, I think be careful with sort of the arrogance, maybe that. Well, and again, organizations. I think it really depends. Like if you're going to a place that's really,
I don't know. I don't think arrogance is ever going to fly, no matter who you're talking to, right?
That's fair. Over promoting yourself or that just in general, I think won't get you very far. But some people are really looking for people who want to work at high profile organizations who are trying to do X, Y, and Z. And so touting that a little bit more will be okay. But I think for the most part, organizations are looking for big, small, or otherwise, just people who care about taking care of patients, care about the people that they're working with, want to just like be a good physician and be well taken care of. So like this.
Yeah, not your own agenda. You're not trying to, you're trying to be a good team player, you're not looking for self-promotion.
I think that's a great way to say it. The more you're trying to negotiate things that make you better, like that are just for you, that'll be a red flag.
Fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. So let's talk about Beginly, because when we were talking before the show, you had told me how inefficient the current recruitment system is. Like the recruitment system kind of makes it, all the focus is on the hospitals and not really on the physicians. And so that's why someone was sold my email address at some point, and I get tons of emails. I have 3 different email addresses. One is like my old email address, one is my work email, and one is my podcast email. And I get recruiting emails for all of these and text messages to my phone, even though I'm a partner in my practice. Like I'm a partner.
Doesn't matter.
It's my practice.
If you on the phone, I might be able to convince you.
No, and like to one of my competitors,
I
like,
know.
It's insanity. It's insanity. So the system is super inefficient. It favors the big hospital systems.
It does.
And like you said, there are like small physician practices, small private practices out there where the earning potential is much higher, and yet they don't have the budgets of the big hospital systems to, paint the walls with their advertisement. So tell me what you're doing at Beginly to put control in the hands of physicians.
Yeah. It's like, where do I even start? Well, first, like back to the how many recruiters exist and the lists and the, like your information is being bought all the time, which is why your inboxes look the way you do. It's funny, physicians who have come through and beta test our app said like, I swear I didn't give my information. It's like, well, you didn't really have to. There's all kinds of ways to purchase your contact info, which is unfortunate. But I think what that does is then you look at how many different recruiters exist in the country who are under an immense amount of pressure. They're pounding everything they can. Cell phones. It's a new strategy, by the way. You probably saw that in the last couple of years, which is like text messages and
hey, Brad.
Yikes.
I don't know who you are.
Pretty brutal. You can only do something for so long and just feel this pressure before you do something about it, or at least that's kind of how I am. And I was looking around waiting for a couple of years for somebody to innovate in the space. Like technology, there can be positive applications of technology. I think this is one of them. So just this idea of, wow, a highly trained physician sort of knows what they might want to do. Okay, why don't we create a place where they can fill out a profile and explain what that might look like privately, right? So you're just doing this sort of in the comfort of your own home. Nobody knows you're filling out profiles. And then we use a matching algorithm to tee up matches against your interests. And we're talking clinical, personal, location preferences. So we're matching you on a lot of different things. And we tee those up to you still privately so you can assess them. We're asking employers to put a lot more information in job postings. It's not like competitive compensation and excellent benefits. Great. Thank you.
Near a lake.
A lot more.
University town.
Exactly. University town. It's like, what kinds of patients do I get to see? Can I build a panel around the types of patients I'm interested in? What more about the culture, links out to videos, just like creating a moment for you all as a physician to explore what's going on without everybody knowing about it. And then making a much more informed decision about what's next. That might be like interesting, but no thank you. And that's totally fine. Or interesting and actually, yeah, I think I might want to talk to that recruiter. So it's like that moment is where you consent to say, I know enough and I'm interested enough to talk to you. And it really changes this whole thing. It's a flip of the script where you're guiding the process because you're telling me what you want and I'm telling you where it exists, as opposed to like the recruiters, the companies that have the most recruiters, they're going to tell you what you want. Yeah. It's a broken system that's needed a revamp for a long time.
It's like democratization of the information.
Yeah.
And, I'd spoken to Sean, who you work with,
Yeah.
about it. And he said there are a lot of advantages to the hospitals as well, right? Because they get feedback. Like if someone doesn't want a job, then you can give feedback that then goes to them so they can be like, oh, this is where we keep hearing over and over that like,
That's exactly right.
all right, well, then we need to change this about the position. And so it's advantageous for the hospitals and the practices as well.
It's true. Yep. That's a big deal. Like that sort of data collection doesn't really happen in this space. I imagine you as a physician, well, any physician, the moment that they've decided no, it's a classic ghosting. You're very rarely getting that actual information. So you just sort of say, I think it was probably because of compensation. It becomes all anecdotal at that point. So yeah, like real data on both sides. The tool is also intended to, you said this earlier, to sort of level the playing field, because current state, this industry is expensive and you're spending a lot of money posting on job boards. You're spending a lot of money on those association sites that, you all are part of. And yet they're not telling you anything unique. So just money being spent on people, on job postings, et cetera. When you're a small group, you can't afford to participate in that. I mean, I'm telling you, like there's one association job board that charges $9,000 for 30 days of posting a job. Most small groups can't.
If you're a small physician practice, and then you're only recruiting by word of mouth.
Correct.
Like that's the only way that these smaller phissician practices are able to do it. Is like,
that's right.
We're looking for someone. Do you know anybody? And then you'll talk to program directors in your area. Like, hey, do you know anybody? But the word isn't spreading beyond your immediate circle.
That's right. Yep. And you're probably, those small orgs then are tapping agencies to help them because they, these contingency agency recruiters don't get paid until they find somebody, right? So now they've got a bunch of different agency recruiters working on their behalf, calling docs. So herein lies the cycle. So the point of beginning is to say, like, it's affordable. It's tiered out in such a way where a small group can afford it. And if you pay me more, you don't get seen more. The point is, like, if it's a match, if it matches what the physician preferences are, you will get teed up at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't want this to become a game where, if the big dog can pay me more, that they're going to, you're going to see their job 2 days before. That's not the point. Like, that doesn't serve anybody well. So in the long term, hopefully we see people finding jobs that are better fits, staying places longer, enjoying the process. And that's the whole goal.
And if you make it friendly for the physicians, this is where the physicians are going to go. And then that's where the employers have to go to find them.
Right.
So you make it ideal for the physicians, then it's going to also make all those recruiters' jobs easier because we're all in the same place. Like, we're all in the same place. You don't have to, spend all this money to try and find us because you've congregated us there.
That's right.
Because it's a place we want to be.
Right.
Because we know it's built in a way that serves.
Right.
So then everybody wins, really.
Yep. Build a good experience. And that's the whole thing. And, when we first launched this company, it's interesting to think about that. Of course, there's two sides to this equation. There's the employers that we have to service, and then there's the users, right? And we made a pretty clear decision early on that, not that we don't care about employers, but you just said it, really.
You prioritize the physicians, and the employers benefit from that.
Yeah.
Right?
So
They're trying to find
us.
us.
This is a physician first tool, purely like, how does this benefit you? And then everything else layers in after that. So
I can't see why they wouldn't want that. Because now you've made their lives easier. You've made the recruiters' lives easier by lining us up.
This whole goal that we can one day say, and we probably can even now, a little bit of like, you can ignore your inbox because like your McGinley messaging center is the only place you need to check because those are the ones you've actually said you want to talk to, right? So like you don't even, the list buying and the rest of it, you can ignore it. It's not going to stop ever. People are always going to buy lists, but to be able to organize in a private place feels important.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm offered lists. I get emails. Hey, do you want to buy this like list of physician names? I'm like, sure, I can send them my newsletter, but there's something just doesn't sit well.
I know. And literally all the people who talk about that are like, I swear I did not put my name anywhere.
Put your name somewhere. So who is this available to right now? Who can you? And so this episode is going to come out July 2024. And so don't hold us to this. If you're listening, this episode is going to be evergreen. So it's going to be up forever. But as of right now, who is this available to?
Honestly, any physician and nurse practitioner or PA. So anybody can jump on and build a profile. But we're sort of a baby company. So we're slowly, not slowly, but slowly adding jobs onto the platform. So, but the nice part about that structure is that you fill out your profile once, and then as we add things and you match, you'll be notified. So it's not like you have to continually go back. It's just like you do it once. And then as we add things that may be of interest to you, when the algorithm runs, it'll let you know. So anybody can fill out a profile today. I will say the majority of the jobs as of the end of June are on the West Coast. That's where I'm at. So we're starting there, but lots of conversations all over the country at this point. So who knows, 6 months from now, fingers crossed.
The world. So I think another cool thing is for the physicians who are not ready to leave their current job, but thinking about it. It's a good way to look without like alerting the world that you are looking for a job. And so, you can create this anonymous profile and then start perusing. You might find something that you like better than your current job. Clearly, I'm not going to be doing that again for reasons I said earlier. But like for other physicians out there, there's a lot of discontent. And so you might not be unhappy enough to leave, but you're unhappy enough to start thinking about it and putting yourself out there.
Yeah. Go test some assumptions. Like, does everybody make people work? See, 30 patients a day? Or is that just here? Just test. And then we're going to have some really beautiful comp tools in there too. So are you getting paid what you should for the market that you're in? I mean, that's to be able to go on there and just sort that out is important. Yeah. Just like validating assumptions, or to your point, just checking it out just in case. There's all kinds of reasons why this may be valuable to people.
So if people want to check Beginly out, where do we find it?
BeginlyHealth.com. Go on and create a free profile. It's always going to be free to physicians. We're just charging the employers.
Love that system.
Forever.
All right. Well, Kristi Olsen, Chief Strategy Officer for Beginly Health at BeginlyHealth.com. Thank you so much for your time and all you're doing for physicians.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Doctors dedicate our lives to caring for others. It's time someone took care of us. Visit patternlife.com to simplify your path to peace of mind. Patternlife.com, simplifying your insurance journey. Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means you either fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please share it, or like it, or comment on a social media post, or write us a 5-star review. Something. It would really help me out. And maybe what you learned from this episode can help someone else too. The views expressed in this episode are those of the interviewer and interviewee and don't represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting make it sound like I'm talking directly to you. This is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice or financial advice or really any advice. Thanks again for listening to The Physician's Guide to Doctoring.